What is up, friend and fellow anti-netter? So I want to talk to you about something that I tried to record last week, but I got two calls that interrupted the podcast during it, and then holy shit, dude, are you fucking kidding me? Yeah, so anyway, there was this apparently completely inept 18-year-old that almost T-boned me just right now, and I did a delay honk. So anyway, I'm just keeping the neighborhood safe there. All right, well, I don't know, this frickin' topic is cursed, because last time I got like two annoying ass phone calls when I tried to record it, and it basically, something happened while I was trying to record it and it didn't work out. All right, should I honk at this little dork kid? There's these hooligan kids, these like 13-year-olds that are like riding these freaking motorcycle bike hybrid things around this suburbia area in which I reside, and it's crazy. All right, we're gonna keep going. So anyway, I tried to record this freaking topic like, multiple times, and something happens. It's cursed. So here's my attempt to finally get this off my chest. And the topic I want to talk about is nothing else matters other than whether or not you know your shit. And here's what I mean by this. I went deeper than anyone else ever would dare to go into the world of analog Zettelkasten. No one even really knew or understand how Zettelkasten worked before I came onto the scene and actually taught people that there were things called bib cards and how main note addresses worked. No one knew any of that. They kind of read Sönke Ahrens's book, How to Take Smart Notes, and they had this vague, broken idea of how it worked. And the numbering system was, poorly put together in academic jargon format. And, I went way deeper than anyone should normally go. What I did was I, invested a ton of time and energy into actually translating Luhmann's note cards from German into English and then writing it out myself by hand. I spent like 4 to 6 weeks going like deep, painfully through his writing, his original work called Communication with Note Boxes, which is a very, very dense read if you haven't tried reading it. I then spent another 4 to 6 weeks going, every sentence, every word at a time through an academic paper by Johannes Schmidt called, Niklas Luhmann's, basically his note box, his publication machine. And I spent a ton of time going through that. And that allowed me to, how this all came about was last week someone was asking me to kind of defend my position that they're, of using top-level branches for, addresses in my anti-net Zettelkasten and how I teach it. And I showed him, actually how Luhmann's notebox worked by simply, instead of just like, rewriting what I've said a million times eloquently and stated so clearly in my book, what I did was I said, okay, here, actually go and see page 78 of the book Zettelkasten Myths and Denials. And that book is actually offered for subscribers of the Scott Shepherd letter. It's like, I don't know, like 100-something pages book that I actually cut out from the Anti-Net Zettelkasten book, but there's a lot of valuable material in there. And as I was reading the book, I was like, wow, this is really deep. This is profound. Every single point was backed up by a reference, a footnote, and, as I was reading it, I hadn't read it in probably about like a year, and I was going through it and I was reading it. I'm like, did I even write this? Like, this is pretty incredible. It's like, it was eloquently written. I cited every single point. I showed examples of what Luhmann said and what Sönke Ahrens said, and why, it's a fallacy and a myth that Lumen did not have top-level categories or even sub-level categories and branches in his own Zettelkasten. And as I was going through this, I had also recalled something that a fellow anti-netter said to me recently. He was like, you know what, I really want to write about a certain topic, but I feel imposter syndrome because I don't have a degree in it. I don't have a PhD in, cognitive science or, machine learning. And I feel like I need to go to school and I need to get a PhD and a master's in order to even write about something and in order to even have credibility about something. And as I reflect back on this whole movement we've created with the Anti-Net Zettelkasten, it occurred to me, it's like, you know what? Nothing matters. Nothing matters other than, do you know your stuff? Do you know your topic cold? Do you know it better than anyone else? It doesn't matter. All of the other surrounding things. I mean, if you go back and look at my early Zettelkasten videos on YouTube, I'm kind of catering to an audience that is normally comprised of librarians and archivists and academics and PhDs, some pedantic, some not. And, here I am, some dude from San Diego wearing a backwards hat that's just ranting on his phone and teaching people how an analog Zettelkasten actually works. And guess what? All of the other material properties surrounding me really don't matter and didn't matter. The fact that, hey, I'm this backwards hat wearing, guy that says dude from Southern California, none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was, do I know my stuff and am I super passionate about what I'm doing? If you have those two things, you don't need to get a degree. Nothing else matters in the commercial, independent researcher world that we live in. And, this is the best time where knowledge is no longer confined and locked away in institutions. We are a decentralized, distributed society these days. And, all of the work we create can essentially propagate and reach, the desired people, the desired recipients. And you don't have to have an academic degree to do so. You can be an independent researcher and still thrive in this day and age. And don't let the idea that you're too young or too old hold you back. I see it on both sides of the spectrum. I see people that have just retired and they have imposter syndrome from being too old. And then I have 16-year-old brilliant geniuses in my audience that have imposter syndrome for being too young. Well, guess what? It really doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter. What you look like doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is, are you passionate? And do you have the traits of something I talked about in issue number 5 of the Scott Scheper letter, the courageous leader? Are you a courageous leader? And if you have that component, there's a few other components. You can create a movement around your intellectual knowledge work. And that's the game we're playing today. That's the game that you need to be playing. If you can code or write, meaning write books. One second, there's a freaking ambulance. I swear, this topic is cursed. Every time for a fire truck, every time I talk about this, something happens. But you know what? I'm going to persist and get through this. Jesus Christ, there's another freaking ambulance almost going to T-bone me. Okay. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I've pretty much nailed it and nailed the landing. And, what I'm trying to say is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're too young or too old. The only thing that matters is, do you know your stuff? All right. That's all I want to say. And before I get T-boned almost for the third time on this drive, I'm going to end this now, but not before saying, always remember to stay crispy, my friend. Peace.